Greetings everyone, this is the Questing GM. I know it's been a very long time since I made another video, prep quest video for Out of the Abyss. There's plenty of excuses for that, but we are now coming into chapter 4, which I consider as one of the meatiest chapters among the entire module, maybe just after Menzoberranzan, which is like one of the last chapters. So I think it's like really worth taking your time to really dive in and really get accustomed and get used to the layout and get used to the connected threads and ideas that are available in this chapter. Because in my experience, when I was running Out of the Abyss chapter 4 for my group, and when we had to talk about it, it was easily one of the best chapters my group felt, and they really enjoyed all the sort of things that were happening in the city. They remembered the NPCs quite well, and yeah, I mean, like, even compared to the final fights, final showdowns with the demon lords, they said this was easily one of the best moments or highlights of the adventure module they felt. So I felt that if you were going to run the city of Gracklstugh, it probably will pay off to you as well, if especially if you get to spend more time in the city, as much as more than I had. And it takes a lot of time to prep as well for this for the city for Gracklstugh. So because you need to make sense of a lot of everything, and it takes quite a lot to read through, because chapter 4 starts in page 50 of the Out of the Abyss adventure Out of the Abyss adventure module. It's in case quickly right here, and it goes up to like page 60 something or more. Let me just have a quick. It goes up to page 82. So that's about 30 over pages worth of materials that you can work with, and that can be a lot also to organize and to digest, and to also work out what is exactly that you can do in the city itself. So given that there's this big amount of information, I've decided to split the Gracklstugh in chapter 4 into two parts. So the first part will be just talking about Gracklstugh, the city itself, and then the second part I will get more in depth with the Wallstone tunnels, when the players will have to go there sooner or later as part of the main quest in chapter 4. So for now, I'm just going to do like a brief summary of all the different sections within chapter 4 itself, what you're going to read, and I'll be only going through the sections up until before the Wallstone tunnels is mentioned. So that would definitely bring you up to, it's from between page 50 to page 67-ish, just on the parts of the Gracklstugh itself. So the first part it mentions just talks about going to Gracklstugh, like what are the reasons for your players who want to go to Gracklstugh, and what can happen when they reach Gracklstugh. So what are the reasons for the players to go to Gracklstugh? Mainly because according chronologically, based on how the book is arranged, Gracklstugh would actually be the first main settlement or main city the players would actually reach or go to in the first half of the adventure. Assuming you tread your PCs, leaving Valkenvale, then go to Stupadup and through the Dark Lake, and then from the Dark Lake the first port of call they can actually potentially reach is Gracklstugh. And the book mentions a couple of NPCs that can bring them there. One is Bupido, the Darrow, who they can meet in Valkenvale, and then the other is Hamath, who is actually a Duergar merchant about to be sacrificed in Stupadup. So those are the two main characters or NPCs that the PCs can meet, who has ties to Gracklstugh and can lead them there into the city for if there's any reason that the PCs want to get there. Another good reason why the PCs want to go to Gracklstugh is that maybe because Gracklstugh is a city of Duergars, grey dwarfs, and they have this sort of tenuous relationship with the Drow. So potentially the PCs could be forced to go to Gracklstugh is because they want to lose the trace. They want to lose their tracks with the Drow pursuit that's following them. And there are actually rules inside the book itself that do mentions about what the PCs can do to reduce the pursuit level if they actually go into Gracklstugh. Although they're not entirely free from the drow because there are some random encounters into the city where they could meet up with some other drow, but do give the impression to your players that this is a potential method if the PCs are thinking that the drop pursuit is too close and they want to find some cover for it for their hideout. So the next section then talks about what are these sort of random encounters inside the city itself. Now this one is a little odd for me why they would put this here, because most of these random encounters to me would actually suit on a later part of the book, which goes into the talk about the Dark Lake District and the Blade Bazaar, which is actually the main area where the PCs would be spending most of the time. But as a matter of when they arrive at Gracklstugh, there are basically two ways that the PCs can actually enter into the city. The first way would be through the Dark Lake, and that's actually the more ideal recommended way for the PCs to actually enter the city, because with the help of like maybe Widow and Hammer, they can actually potentially sneak their way into the city by just knowing docking their boats on the safer side of the docks, and they can just stealthily make their way in. The other method is actually through the city gates. So the city gates is potentially very dangerous, because if anyone who's non-Duergar walks right down to the gate, are potentially going to be just get captured right out of the gate, and be sold as slaves. Although in the book here it does recommend, they do provide an encounter where if the PCs just walk up right to the gate, there is a corrupted Duergar guard they can actually bribe their way through, but they have to provide with some sort of like finely crafted weapon. So in this case, it could be a magic weapon, or it could be a drow crafted weapon they managed to steal from Welcome Vale, or maybe just any kind of weapon they managed to loot from any bodies while on their way to the city. So there's no exact reason why the PCs would actually end up at the city gates, like unless perhaps they didn't go to Slupadup, they didn't go through the Dark Lake, and they were more willing to travel around the Underdark and decided to make a stop to Gracklstugh, and then by land they will most likely end up at the city gates. But if they actually travel through the Dark Lake, then it's more likely they will actually end up by the docks, and that's actually the more safer way for them to enter the city without being harassed or having to bribe someone. All right. So next, then the book goes and talks about the important NPCs, which I will get to those later on, because these just give you a very brief overview of some of the names, but who are these NPCs will be more involved later on when you actually encounter them later in the book. Then there's also factions within the city itself. The factions are the Deep King himself, the Deep King Holgar Steelshadow V, the Council of Lairds, the Council of Sevens. The Council of Lairds are basically the clan leaders of the Duergar clans, and the Council of Sevens are actually the more privileged members of the Darrow community. Then you have the Merchant Council, you have the Gracklstugh military, you have the Clan Caingon, which are a clan of stone giants who resides within the city itself, because they have a pact with the Deep Shadow dynasty. You can read it. You can read up Steel Shadow dynasty. You can read up that's page 55, and then you have the Keepers of the Flame. The Keepers of the Flame are an interesting faction. I personally didn't get to use them in my running of the Out of the Abyss, but the Keepers of the Flame are basically a so-called group of Duergar priests who takes care of a red dragon, which they call the Wormsmith. And the Wormsmith is actually the one who goes around, lighting up forges and making sure that the fires of the smelters are all going. So the Keepers of the Flame are the one who sort of herd this red dragon around. And there is an interesting conflict between the current Wormsmith by the name of Tempershout, who is a red dragon, with the Keepers of the Flame, which also will be explored later in the parts of the city. Then you have the Grey Ghosts. The Grey Ghosts are basically the thieves guild of the city, but they are comprised of a very interesting group of Duergars in the sense that they are because honor and being a clan member is very highly important in Duergar society, but there are also incidences where certain Duergar, especially those that commit certain crimes, can get expelled from their clan and they become honorless. and this is usually where they join the Grey Ghost after that. Uh, so most of the Grey Ghost members are actually honorless Duergar, and you get to read about that later on when they talk about life in the city, of how Duergar society works and all that. And then lastly you have the empty scabbard killers. So the empty scabbard killers are basically the assassins guild in the city, and uh, if you do read up on Deep King Hogar himself, uh, they do mention that the king himself actually sometimes hires these assassins to keep the council of layers in check. Like he eliminates any potential rivals, or he culls certain members off from the council, just so that he can maintain a king a sort of king and subject relationship on the council, rather than letting them growing too powerful to overthrow his rule. The anti-scabber killers also has a small few encounters to play in the city itself, so it's good to read up on them. But their motivations and their background don't really play as much into this chapter as how it's written. So I would definitely encourage you to like really read up about them and try to think about more ways that you can insert them into part of the fabric of the society in Gracklstugh, and see how you can make them a more significant and more relevant uh, group to the players, while the players are in Gracklstugh itself. So the next session goes into the life in the city of Blades. Now this is where all the interesting part of the city actually for me comes in. They talk about the outcast system. They talk about the strict hierarchies. They talk about religion. They also talk about how law and order is kept, which I would definitely recommend. If you don't read any of the other section, definitely just read the ones on law and order, because that's the one that would really concentrate on telling you how the party is allowed to behave while they're inside the city. And it's actually because of their strict laws and order, very simplistic laws and strict punishment, that actually can be used as a great hook for the PCs to get involved in the politics and the dynamics of the city, which is kind of what the main point of the city is anyways. All right. Then we go on to a huge overview about the city itself. Page 56 is Gracklstugh, which is where they start. They talk about the points of entry, like the city gates and the Dark Lake docks, which I mentioned earlier, how the PCs can enter the city, what happens if they get captured. Then you have the next section. The next area would be the Dark Lake district. So the Dark Lake district is basically sort of like the outsiders section, in the sense, the foreigner section. It's the only district in the entire city where non-Duergar are allowed to be in, and they can mingle around there, and that's where they do trade with the Duergar. And no one who is not a Duergar is allowed to leave the Dark Lake district to enter into any other parts of the city. You will need very special permissions or authority to actually allow you to leave the Dark Lake district. So Dark Lake district is easily going to be the main place where the PCs are going to be doing their adventures in, unless the party has a Duergar in the group or some that you allow somehow. But if there's no other district that you can really prep for, I would say definitely put all your attention on the Dark Lake district. That's the place of where it is, and there are plenty of like locations within the Dark Lake district itself. You have the Blade Bazaar. So Blade Bazaar is basically the marketplace of the within the Dark Lake district itself. That's where you can buy lots of things, that is produced by Gracklstugh, usually weapons. But I'll get to that a little bit later on when I give my own recommendations. Then you have places like the Dark Lake Brewery. The Dark Lake Brewery is not quest relevant or in the chapter, but it's probably just for added flavor that the PCs can explore. If the PCs really take their time to explore the city, they can find the Dark Lake Brewery, which makes their proprietary Dark Lake Stout, I believe it's called, which is like it's only can be found in Gracklstugh. It cannot be found anywhere else. So for the more trade-minded PC, they may want to purchase a few of this because it could be useful later down the road when they have to trade it with something else, especially in the second half of the adventure. The Dark Lake Docks, which I actually mentioned already. So there's basically anyone who enters the city through the Dark Lake will have to park their boats there, and there is an encounter there, that upon arrival where the PCs sort of need to can make a needs to make a split decision about something. Uh, basically upon arrival at the Dark Lake Docks, they would witness an assassination attempt by the Enter-Scabbard killers on a merchant, on a Durga merchant. So the book sort of gives a few general ideas of how to run the encounter, and the PCs only have like a couple of rounds to decide whether they want to save the Durga merchant or not from the Enter-Scabbard killers. And even if they do decide to do so, they may not be able to make it in time to save the merchant. But if they do save the merchant would actually would provide, show his gratitude and would want to pay the PCs back later on, and he would bring them to the Shattered Spire. So the Shattered Spire is also still in the Dark Lake District. It's basically it's a tavern. It's a tavern where other races mix around, and if the PCs actually do save this Durga merchant by the name of Word Salt Baron, he may give them an additional quest that will actually lead them to Blingdenstone. Yes, is it Blingdenstone? Yeah, will actually lead them to Blingdenstone, which I'll talk a bit later on, because in regards to the connection of like what happens after Gracklstugh. Then you have the Goldbrawn Lair, Goldbrawn, yeah, chapter page 63. The Goldbrawn is basically the dwarven word for boulet. So it's the only inn in the city that allows for outsiders to stay in. So it's kind of like the melting pot of the entire city. That's where the PCs are most likely to meet up with other races, including the Drow. And there is that one encounter where a Drow emissary could have actually stumbled upon the PCs, and you get to decide, or you get to roll whether to decide whether this Drow emissary is someone who is acquainted with the house that enslaved the PCs in Valkenvale. So the house that enslaved the PCs in Valkenvale is called House Mizrim. So you get to roll or decide whether this Drow emissary is someone from a house who is friendly to House Mizrim or opposed to House Mizrim. So it can really go either way. If it's friendly to House Mizrim, then they may sort of take off some other Drow scouts that were sent by Ilvara to find the PCs in the Gracklstugh, and that will eventually lead to that encounter where the Drow will try to recapture the PCs in Gracklstugh. If the Drow emissary is opposed to House Mizrim, then they may work with the PCs to tell them, all right, there's someone who's actually looking for you in Gracklstugh, so you might want to really stay a bit lower profile, or maybe arrange for some kind of escape from the city without being noticed by the Drow or something like that. So that can be a very powerful motivation for the PCs intent to stay and leave Gracklstugh, because if the PCs are found out by the Drow that they are actually in Gracklstugh, they may arrange for some kind of ambush within the city, or they may do it outside the city. So that poses a threat to the PCs that they may not be able to leave Gracklstugh, peacefully, and they may need some kind of protection from leaving the city, or they may need some other means of escaping the city without drawing the Drow's attention. So I would definitely use that as a very powerful drive to the PC's motivations of what would they want to do within Gracklstugh itself. And even within Gracklstugh itself, there are possible means for the PCs to try to find a way out to the surface, even because especially in the Dark Lake District, it being the trading area of the city, it is likely that they can actually meet with someone who knows a way out to the surface, and there are actually some races who may actually travel to the surface quite frequently, so they may be able to find someone who can tell them that what's the way out to the city. But as I mentioned before, the next logical, or at least the next implied destination after Gracklstugh, based on the sort of threats that have been dropped around here and there, some of the plot seeds that are dropped around here and there, is actually Blingdenstone. So if you have made your decision that you kind of want to railroad your PCs across the first half and finally make them and only put the exit to the surface at the last bit of the first half, then then you can just sort of say like, all right, all the directions given by whoever's in the dark district will all just point to say go to Blimdenstone, and that's most likely where you will find your way out. All right. So other areas, all right. There's Ladogus Furrow. So basically, the city of Gracklstugh is basically split into half. There's a north and south furrow, if I'm not mistaken, and in between that is there's this rift called Ladogus Furrow. So that's basically Darrow territory. The furrow itself is Dago territory. Between the north and south furrow is actually still like where the Duergar cities are placed, and the Darrows are actually the ones who live in between them. You can think of them like as like ghettos or something like that. But the PCs would eventually have to go down there if you follow what the book sort of implies the PCs to go around to. And at the bottom of Ladogus Furrow, there is the East Cleft and the West Cleft districts. So these are the two main districts of where the Darrow live. And the PCs will actually have to will have to go down to Ladogus Furrow and will have to go to the West Cleft to get into the Rollstone tunnels. So that's actually a very important route for the PCs to know and how to get there. Coincidentally, the Ladogus Furrow is actually outside the Dark Lake district. So the PCs will actually have to find a way to actually leave the Dark Lake district, without incurring any kind of trouble before they can actually go down to Ladogus Furrow and to go to the Rollstone tunnels from there. So other places mentioned is the Halls of Sacred Spells. The Halls of Sacred Spells is basically where the Council of Sevens reside in. By the book, it says here there's actually not much place that there's no real way to enter the Halls of Sacred Spells, from the front door. There's basically no front door. It's sort of like connected to the West Cleft. Yeah, it's connected to the West Cleft, and the Darrow Sevens who live there sort of had to use spells to actually come out from the source of sacred spell. In my experience, the Halls of Sacred Spells didn't really turn out to be, any kind of space of significance, but they just put it here anyways, just in case like the PCs actually want to find a way to enter into the to meet with the Council of Sevens or for one reason or another. King Grom Cavern is actually where the stone giants that I mentioned, the clan King Grom lives. And there is actually an encounter in the Dark Lake district in the Blade Bazaar, where there's a rampaging giant who comes out and he's like gone insane and is growing a second head, and the PCs will be there, but as the giant rampages through that part of the city of the Dark Lake district, the PCs can be involved in trying to putting it down, and if they do put it down or killed or unconscious, another stone giant will come and pick up the corpse, and he will tell if the PCs did help, he will tell the PCs that they would their stone speaker, which is the leader of the Klingon clan, will want to speak with the PCs, and this is where the PCs will have to come also to meet with the stone speaker. The Klingon Cavern is also located outside the Dark Lake district, so yeah, it all makes sense later on in the later parts of the adventure in this chapter where the PCs actually do gain access to leave the Dark Lake district, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. Then you have Tempershout's lair, which is actually where the Keeper of the Flame and where the Wormsmith, the Red Dragon Wormsmith lives. This is also another place where the PCs will have to go if they want to meet, if they are called or summoned to meet with Tempershout for whatever reason. By the book, the only reason that the PCs would actually be involved with the Keeper of Flames is either through a random encounter, or where they actually get to see Tempershout himself, or actually if the PCs do get arrested for whatever crimes they committed within the Dark Lake district, and the Keeper of the Flame actually come and interrupts their arrest and actually says that okay, the Wormsmith has summoned them for whatever reason and they should go and meet him instead and they should not be arrested. Alright, so that's basically just what the book says up to this point, in terms of all the locations and all that. So what is it, and based even just like even like in the Out of the Abyss DM's Facebook group, there's still a lot of people who's having a lot of challenges trying to make sense of what is it exactly that PCs are supposed to do while they're inside Gracklstugh. And they can be very confusing because of the way the book will lay out. They sometimes when you're reading a particular district or a particular location, they list down all the random encounter, all the sort of set encounters that the PCs can do there. But you need to perform a bit of more of an overview read, like try to get a map of Gracklstugh, and you try to get a point, what you call it, a pin or a marker to sort of say it's like, all right, in the Blade Bazaar, these are the encounters that will happen, and in the Shattered Spire, these are the encounters that are supposed to happen, in Temple Shout there, these are the encounters that are supposed to happen. Because you want to have an overall picture, and that's how you should plan what the PCs do encounter while they're in Gracklstugh in itself. Now, the way it reads to me, upon, like as I mentioned, like upon arriving into Gracklstugh from, say, the Dark Lake docks, the PCs will actually already stumble into the assassination attempt that I mentioned. So that will actually lead them to one quest giver who is Word Salt Baron, but his quest is dealt outside of the city. Then there is the Drow pursuit potential that could happen either through a random encounter if they bump into this Drow emissary, maybe in Shattered Spire, maybe in the Galborn Lair, or maybe in the Blade Bazaar. There's a random encounter for that, and that could sort of drive the PC's activities inside the city, which is to try to lay low from the Drow pursuit or from one way or another. Another possible thing they can do is that while they're is to get to know the city, to explore the Dark Lake district, to explore the Blade Bazaar, and get themselves into trouble. And the idea is not to let them get into trouble by their own means. The idea, I guess, is to get the PC into trouble in ways that they didn't realize, and to be captured for crimes they have no idea they committed, and to also highlight the fact that some of these crimes or some of these punishments or what they did is sort of a bit overblown and a bit, on the madness side. So you're kind of supposed to give a hint to the PCs that yes, madness is sort of encroaching on this city, but it's in a more subtler way than it was in Stupidook. And it's actually a pretty easy thing to do. Especially like I mentioned, if you read the parts of Law and Order, they mention things like even basic crimes like haggling. Haggling is a crime. So even by just haggling with the Duergar there, they can start calling in the Stone Guard, which is basically the city guard, to come and arrest the PCs just for that. And there are also like other random encounters where they are like the Duergar abusers or Darrow madmen or mad Duergars roaming around the city, or slave caravans. Like if the PCs get a little bit too are more on the lawful side, and they feel like they want to help out with some of these incidences, then yeah, those are also very easy pretexts that the PCs will get arrested for. And the moment they get arrested is actually things where things start to get a little interesting, because that's actually like if you go to page, I believe it's there's a section in the book where it just sort of just tells like what happens if the PCs get captured, and that's actually where that's where the wheels start to turn in a sense, because either they get captured by the Stone Guard and they get sent to a place called Overlake Hole, which is sort of like the Stone Guard headquarters in the Dark Lake district, and then that's where they will meet with the captain, and the captain's name, Erde Blackskull, is a Duergar captain who sort of offers them a job to do outside the Dark Lake district, in the interest of the Duergar. Or they could bump into the Keepers of Flame, who sort of relieve the PCs from the Stone Guard, and then send them and then escort them to meet with Temple Shout in Temple Shout's lair. So that leads to another quest line related to the Keeper of Flames and Temple Shout, which is basically the the Keepers of Flame have lost a dragon egg, and the dragon egg is supposed to be the successor to Temple Shao. And the thing is, the Keeper of Flames have this tradition where they actually kill the Wormsmith, the red dragon, before it gets too powerful to be controlled. And this is something that Temple Shao himself does not know, and any of the Wormsmiths previous to him does not know that this is how they do it. So Temple Shao is actually being suspicious of the Keeper of Flames, that they are hiding something from him, but he wants to know exactly why it is. And if the PCs do get involved within this quest line, the PCs actually get to decide whether they want to work for Temple Shao or they want to work for the Keepers of the Flame. That's really up to for the PCs to decide. But in any case, if they work for the Keepers of the Flame, they will tell the PCs to find back the dragon egg. If they work for Temple Shao will just tell them to do whatever the Keeper of Flame tells them to do, but report back to Temple Shao first before honoring whatever promises they have done to the Keeper of Flames. And in which case they would know, the PCs would tell Temple Shao that they have been hired by the Keepers of Flame to recover the egg, and Temple Shao will probably put 2 and 2 together to realize that the egg is supposed to be successor, and he will probably be very angered to know the fact that he is about to be replaced by a red dragon egg, and all hell will break loose as a result of that. The third other option, as I mentioned, is the drow pursuit. So if the PCs get arrested, then the drows may come in and say, okay, we would like to bring these guys back to our side. But then there will definitely be some conflict, in the sense that maybe early Captain Blackskull will sort of make an arrangement, like if they finish this one thing we ask them to do, and then we can hand them over back to the drow. That can be played around with. Now another thing, if the PCs are exploring the city and they are looking for a way out to the surface, and you have decided that the exit to the surface can be anywhere the PCs decide it to be, then one person that will most likely be pointed to us is actually a dual guard merchant by the name of Yusha Hunstack. So you can find her information basically in page 53, where they give a summary about her. But she can be found, I think, in the Blade Bazaar, or more or less pointed to in the Blade. But if they ask around the Blade Bazaar, they will say go look for Yusha Hunstack, and they'll be led to her office, somewhere in the Dark Lake district, and she would actually provide a quest to the PCs, in the sense that she's looking. That the Darrow has been acquiring some kind of source of wealth that she's very curious of where it comes from. Most of them are like surface related sort of wealth, like elven coins, some jewelries, and things like that. And she wants to know where the Darrows are getting it, and she would her reward is a way to reach the surface, or at least of her knowledge of where the next surface exit is. So regardless whether the PCs work for Stone Guard, or the Captain Blackskull, whether they work for the Keeper of Flames, or whether they work for Yusha, it all boils down to one major NPC in the city, which is by the name of Jockey. So Jockey is a Darrow courier who the PCs can actually stumble upon him in the Blade Bazaar. He's a random encounter, but given his importance to the main plot of the city, you will want to make the PCs sort of know who he is or have seen him before, and whoever they work for all are looking for Jockey. They would tell the PC to go find this Jockey. So Jockey can be connected to the quest in different ways. For the Stone Guard, Jockey is believed to be a courier who works for the Great Ghost, and also possibly with the Council of Sevens, who may be plotting a coup. That's a suspicion that the Stone Guard has. To the Keeper of the Flame, they believe that Jockey would be connected to the Great Ghost, and it was the Great Ghost who actually stole the dragon egg. And for Yusha is that if you can find Jockey and follow Jockey to wherever he collects the wealth, then that's where the secret of their wealth is. So whatever directions that the PCs get themselves involved with, the next step will naturally be to find Jockey. And there's this entire section about talking about how they can find Jockey in the Blade Bazaar, and how they can follow Jockey, and Jockey will eventually lead them into the West Cleft, West Cleft district, and then eventually into the Warstone tunnels. So I'll talk more about finding Jockey specifically, uh, as detailed in the Warstone tunnels in the next video on chapter 4. Okay, so my experiences uh, for running this particular section of the city, uh, like I mentioned, it was easily the best part. I mean, and because it's a city, so my players, I remember they sort of like had a lot of time roaming around, but I would say like try to make sure that the PCs get the message that they are outsiders, and they are being constantly watched, not just by the Drow but also by the Duergar as outsiders. So the feeling is this is sort of like a paranoia feeling, like of being constantly watched. It's like a surveillance state in a way, especially because the Duergars, like, regard all Duergars can turn invisible. So it's really not advisable for the PCs to do any kind of mischief in the city, unless they intentionally want to get into trouble. But like I said, it's either even if the PCs are not causing trouble, trouble will easily find them, and that's kind of like the driving force of what to make the PCs do what is stated in the book. That trouble eventually comes up to their door eventually, whether they like it or not. But I would definitely say, like, if the PCs do cause their own problems, use it to your advantage as a DM to draw them into the main plot of the city. Uh, so that's all I would say in terms of what the book tells you to do in the Blade Bazaar. These are the interconnectedness of the city according to the book. But I definitely do have some ideas that I had during and after running this part of the adventure. Uh, my first recommendation is definitely try to secure yourself Modern Kingdom's Tomb of Foes, because in the book, in this book itself, I believe it's like page. There's an entire chapter about dwarfs, and there's this section about that where they talk about the so-called life, or how the society of Duergars, behave themselves. So that was actually really very. When I didn't Modern Kingdoms was not released when I ran it, but I would say that it added a lot more flavor into understanding the mindsets of the Duergar. And uh, that's not to say that the adventure module itself doesn't provide that kind of information. In fact, there are actually a lot of sidebars talking about Duergar life and how to roleplay Duergars and Darrow even. But I would definitely say, like, if you already have Modern Kingdoms Tomb of Foes, I'm just going to point to you, going to page 77 to 70 to 81. That basically just talks about Duergar life, Duergar mentality, the religion, what what usually exists in Duergar culture and all that. So if you're looking for like additional lore and flavor, I would definitely say read up what's already available in the module, and definitely check out Modern Kingdoms Tomb of Foes. Uh, if if anything, you could also find some of the stats of monsters, stats of the Duergar that's found in Out of the Abyss are actually sort of reprinted in Modern Kingdoms Tomb of Foes, like the soul blades. I believe some of the stone guards are also reprinted here. So, but it's the Modern Kingdoms Tomb of Foes version are definitely the more updated version than what's in Out of the Abyss. So that's my first recommendation. Uh, and if you read into the book itself, they sort of talk about the relationship between Durga and Darrow. So there is this sort of, the Darrows are basically like second class citizens. uh, I believe that the books also sort of explain a little bit about that who the Darrow are, like in the sense that they were sort of like trying to cause an uprising before, and then they had to be put down, and then they were all treated as slaves later on to that. And the Durga being the more lawful side, and the Darrow are actually the more chaotic side of that of of Underdark under dark dwarfs in that sense. Yeah. So I would definitely say, try to at least give the players some general idea of how Duro and Duergar sit to each other, because that's kind of the main plot also behind the whole chapter, in the sense that the Darrows are actually trying to plan some sort of coup against the Duergar and trying to overthrow the king, and take over Gracklstugh as a Darrow city. So that's kind of the big secret plot that's going behind it. And the tension, where does the tension come from, is definitely, once you understand the animosity that the Duergar and the Darrow have for each other. All right, another recommendation is the book. This is something also mentioned in the book, that Bupido should try to escape from the party the moment they reach Gracklstugh, and that's because Bupido has a part to play when the PC start exploring Warstone tunnels, which you get to that in the second video. And the best place I can recommend for Bupido to escape and still be useful to PC in that sense is when the moment they arrive at the Dark Lake docks. And Bupido may be actually be the best person to lead them to the Dark Lake docks. And according to the book, there's actually an entrance to the Warstone tunnels in the Dark Lake docks. So the PCs may just be Bupido maybe just guide the PCs to the Dark Lake docks, and then they disembark and try to find a way around. They turn around and Bupido's gone missing. So if once they receive the quest that they have to go to the Warstone tunnels to find Jockey or whatever, then that's where they can sort of like backtrack and trace back that actually Bupido has accidentally led them to it without them knowing at this point. So it's useful information for the PCs it's useful information, and also plays into the plot of the chapter. So make Bupido disappear as soon as possible, as soon as you can. Now, as far as in terms of exploring the city in itself, I was running on a time crunch, in the sense that I didn't have a lot of time to run in Gracklstugh itself. But if your campaign or your running of Audiovis is more free forming, free flowing, in the sense that you can make a PC stay in a particular location for as long as you need, for as long as they want to, then definitely really just play up encounters or random encounters within the city when they do shopping, and they meet up with Duergar patrols, when they meet up with Darrow rioters or certain madmen, the random drow, the random orc, the random quaggoth, random kobolds. There are definitely ways to enjoy their time in Dark Lake District. And at the same time, you will also need to bear in mind that there is a thing called Gracklstugh, which is something like a disease that that happens with if you're a non-Duergar, you stay too long in the city. It's basically caused by all the smoke and all that, and it actually can potentially give a PCs a hacking cough. So that sidebar is in page 54, and that could be a result of staying in the city for a bit too long. But eventually the PC can actually overcome this problem and this disease, and they won't be affected by it later on. But that may be a bit too harsh for your PCs, because they actually become fatigued, I believe. They gain exhaustion. Yeah, they gain exhaustion as a result of failing and contracting Gracklstugh. So yeah, it's something that you could play as a flavor, but you might want to bear in mind that it could potentially be deadly for just failing a few saving throws. Saving throws. All right. While exploring the city, try to play up the paranoia or madness that's going on in the city subtly, just through the weird interactions that the PCs are having with the NPCs or with the sellers and the merchants, because that's kind of the driving force. That's kind of what the Darrows are doing to the city. They are trying to spread basically the Fey race, and also through some mechanical thing that they're slowly turning the Duergar into madness. And one way you can actually do this whole madness in the city thing They actually have a sidebar for this. It's in page 55. But basically, how I could recommend you doing it is try to just perverse every aspect of Duergar principles or morals. You know, because if you read things like how the Council of Layers work, and how Duergar society is structured in terms of they are very highly disciplined, you could just put them into a more chaotic band. And that's kind of like trying to give the signal to the players that actually something is not right in the city. So yeah, definitely try to insert some paranoia and madness, uh, as if the city is underneath what's the everyday going on in the city, and give the players some kind of inkling that something's not right. And that's actually some of the main quests later on when they meet with Captain Erde, who tells the PCs one of the main quests is to find Jockey, and the other main quest is actually for them to find any sorts of any kind of proof or evidence of corruption that's happening in the city. So if they actually manage to collect enough information, evidence about this madness, they can actually report to Captain Erde, and he will actually give them a reward and complete that quest. All right. Another point that you should also highlight is how PCs are being treated as outsiders, especially by the Duergar, and you just want to reinforce the idea that they are not supposed to leave the Dark Lake District, and anyone who attempts to do so, you're not going to get into trouble unless they get special permission from Captain Erde or the Keeper of the Flame. So one thing I forgot to mention is that if the PCs do actually get themselves into trouble and they eventually agree to work with Captain Erde or the Keeper of the Flame, both of these factions actually do provide some kind of badge to the PCs that allows them to leave Dark Lake District and to go into the other parts of the city. And for example, like if the PCs get the badge from the Stone Guard or Captain Erde, then they would actually be allowed to leave the Dark Lake District, go down to the Leathergoods Pharaoh, and then go to West Cleft District to trace Jockey, and the same for the Keeper of the Flames. So prior to that, the PCs are supposed to get the message that they're not supposed to leave the Dark Lake District, and maybe even the attempt to leave the Dark Lake District is the one that actually gets into trouble, and then they get sent to meet with Captain Erde herself. For all you know, there could be another way. So I've mentioned already before that getting even if the PCs are avoiding trouble, trouble will eventually come to them eventually. That's basically how the book presents itself into getting the PCs involved with what's happening in the city. So I would definitely say try to sort of plan the timing of when you get the PCs into trouble based on after what the PCs have done in the city so far, and if things are starting to drag a little bit or not going anywhere, then there will be the time to spring it onto the PCs. All right, it could be a riot, it could be the rampaging giant, it could be just a random crime committed, or just exploiting whatever the PCs do in the city to move them on to the next plot point, which is getting into trouble. Okay, so one recommendation also I would say while the PCs are there, and especially shopping, especially this is maybe the first town where they can actually do some actual shopping. Do push the idea of letting the PCs buy adamantium weapons, and I believe adamantium weapons is also mentioned in maybe I think it's Zenata's guide. Zenata's guide has rules for adamantium weapons, which basically, if I remember correctly, it basically allows them to do double damage to objects or to objects, I believe. And I think to constructs or something like that. Because and it's something that's very unique to Gracklstugh. You will not be able to find adamantiums anywhere else except maybe Mezzobranson. So it's probably like if the PCs are looking for weapons, especially, or armor, especially because adamantium armor is a magical item, so it's possible for them to buy in Gracklstugh if if you can find a good price for it. That's a possible thing that the PC can buy. So adamantium I would say it's a good place to expose PCs to that they may need certain equipment that they may not be able to find anywhere else. So adamantium is definitely like one of the more interesting objects they could find in Gracklstugh compared to anywhere else. All right. So now we'll come to the part of this section of the video where I will just generally share some out of the box ideas that I had for running when I was running out the abyss, especially in Gracklstugh, which some ideas I had before, some ideas I had during, some ideas I had after running out the abyss, and I'm just throwing this out there to you just so that you can think about it and you can just decide for yourself whether they are useful to you, or maybe there's a different direction that you want to take for your version of Gracklstugh, and who knows, maybe it becomes a bit more interesting or more sewn together in your mind than mine. So the underlying demonic influence that's actually perpetuating around the city is actually comes down to Demogorgon. Demogorgon is the one who's responsible for sort of corrupting. There's a cult of Demogorgon worshipping Daryl Sevens, and they are trying to spread Demogorgon's influence around the city, and Demogorgon being basically chaos incarnate, and yeah, the Lord of Madness and the sort of thing, and he's kind of the who was responsible for causing that rampaging giant with 2 heads. So I personally didn't like the idea that after the PCs had gone through Stupid Dupe and meeting with Demogorgon himself, they would actually bump into another city where the influence of Demogorgon is there. It kind of gives a bit too much spotlight on to Demogorgon. So what I was thinking was that maybe the demonic influence should have gone to Graz. And if you read at the very end of chapter 4 in Out of the Abyss, there is actually a succubus that's actually influencing the Deep King, and the succubus actually works for Graz. Now, the reason I'm guessing why Wizard of the Coast didn't include Graz in the Out of the Abyss adventure module itself, because Graz was actually the main demonic influence to the Adventurers League. But if you don't run the Adventurers League, that doesn't really matter at all. And in any case, I would actually sort of recommend you to try to seek out some of the Adventure League expeditions for the Out of the Abyss season. I can't remember, was it season 3 or season 5 maybe, where Graz is the demon in question, and there are actually some adventures where the PCs kind of have to like foil some of Graz's plan, and I feel that most of those adventures can be easily implanted into Out of the Abyss, especially in this chapter. How I would have used Graz in Gracklstugh was that it was actually Graz who's influencing the king, and the king is sort of like breaking a lot of tradition and breaking a lot of rules regarding to Duergar society, and because Graz is sort of like the embodiment of excess, and whereas the Duergars are actually the epitome of moderation and control and discipline, and Graz is sort of like just is a very fine antithesis to the way of life, to the Duergar's way of life. And by influencing the king, it actually it has a very powerful top-down effect on Duergar society as a whole. So I feel like the themes of Graz influencing Gracklstugh makes is more impactful to me than Demogorgon. Although another way you can play is that the Daryls are actually worshipping Demogorgon, and the Duergars are being influenced by Graz. And if the PCs work for the Duergar and defeating the Daryl and stopping the Daryl from doing whatever, they're kind of working in favor of Graz. It's like you're forcing a choice between choosing two evils, and in either case, the PCs don't really get to like whoever the PCs work for. The city suffers in its own way, and try not to make it too obvious. Like make the revelation of which demon is actually influencing the city, like the final reveal. The PCs will find out that the Daryl actually worshipping Demogorgon when they enter in the Warzone tunnels, And the PCs will actually find out that the succubus that's influencing Gratz is when they get to meet with Deep King Hogar. And that's another thing that I would actually also recommend or suggest is that try to end the chapter with meeting Deep King Hogar, which I'll elaborate a bit more in the second part of the video, because that's kind of what happens. That is one of the scenes being provided at the end of uh, after the Warzone tunnels, but the book itself doesn't really give any good reason why would the PCs want to go and meet with Deep King Hogar, other than the PCs themselves wanting to meet him. So I would definitely suggest that try to tie Deep King Hogar stake with the PC's quest, uh, regardless of who they're working for. It could be with the Keeper of the Flames, or it could be with the Stone Guard. And even then, if you really have the time, I would definitely suggest try to tie in the Keeper of the Flames quest line with the Stone Guard's quest line. Because in my case, as the PCs were easily influenced to join to work for the Stone Guard, they totally missed out on the Keeper of Flame quest. And I feel that that's part of a missed opportunity, but at the same time, it's sort of like lets the PC have the illusion of choice in that way. All right. And one way I could see how you could tie the Stone Guard quest with the Keeper of the Flame quest is that instead of the Darrows trying to overthrow the Deep King with the Stone Giants, do it on Tempershout instead. Try to put the influence of Demogorgon on the Darrow to influence Tempershout and make Tempershout go crazy, go mad. Two-headed red dragon. It was definitely a dangerous thing to deal with. And it kind of makes sense to me as well, like because the dragon is actually, a dragon is definitely way more powerful than a stone giant, and it's more manipulate. It's easily to manipulate compared to the stone giants anyway. So by changing the plot of the Darrow of how they're trying to overthrow the city is using Tempershout, I would say that actually gives a bit more reason why the Keeper of the Flames and the Stone God will want to work with each other. And if the PCs do succeed, in recovering the egg and finding out and stopping the Darrow's influence, then they would definitely they will be granted an audience to meet with the Deep King, who wants to reward them for their honorable duty. And reward as in, we will not enslave you, and maybe we will give you a safe passage out of the city without the drow having a hand or knowing that you have left the city in that sense. So I think that's kind of the win-win situation in terms of you get to use every content within the book itself, and the PCs kind of like have a purpose of why you're doing what you're doing in this part for the city. So yeah, all right, this is way much shorter than I anticipated. So I don't know if anything I've said so far makes any sense to you. I think this is maybe the best time for me to say, you have any questions, you have any misgivings, you have any doubts, or you need some clarifications from me in terms of all of the ideas I'm throwing out to you in this video, drop them in the comments, let me know. I will try to respond to those in the best way that I can. And everything else, once the PCs actually do accept the quest and they start finding Jockey, then the next place they will have to go would be, leave the Dark Lake district, go to Leatherwood's Pharaoh, go down to the West Cleft district, and that's kind of where the investigation starts for Jockey. And all that will be covered in the second video where I talk about the Warzone tunnels. So I hope this is going to be very helpful to anyone who's running chapter 4 out of the Abyss. Drop me any comments, any questions, anything like I said. And yeah, my ideas, take it or leave it. I'm not telling you these are the best ways of doing it. These are all merely suggestions, and hopefully everything is clear for you and you will have a good time, a good as a time as my group had with Gracklstugh chapter 4. So this is the Questing GM signing out for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.